Hey guys, this week we're going to be talking about media in India. And as we go into looking at the different types of media that India has and what's popular, I think it should be present in your mind that India has a lot of Western influence on their media structure and the types of media outlets they have. So as we kind of go in and talk about all of this, just keep that in mind and kind of how that plays into each other. So when you look at India, they are ranked 142 out of 180 on the Free Press Index rating. In 2020, they had 4 journalists killed in connection with their work. Overall, India is one of the most dangerous countries for journalists. Really, if they're just trying to do their job properly, to report the truth, they put themselves in a lot of danger. And we'll talk about why here in a minute. But it's not a safe place for journalists, whether they're foreign or domestic. Journalists are exposed to every kind of attack, including police violence. They ambush any type of political activist, and a lot of criminal groups or corrupt local officials really harass journalists and put them in a lot of danger. With their Prime Minister Modi, there's been a lot of pressure for media to really toe the line when it comes to Hindu nationalist ideals, and we'll talk about that a little more here in a minute. When it comes to the type of punishment journalists have, they get put under what is called a gag order, and basically they are reported to basically go against the government, and then they are put in prison, and that prison sentence can be up to life. And in 2020, like a lot of the other countries we've looked at, the government took a big advantage of the coronavirus and decided to take control of news coverage in India and basically started prosecuting journalists that provided any other alternative information than what the government was giving. At this time, there are 368 journalists that are imprisoned. 99 of them are citizen journalists, and 24 are just media assistants. In 2022, 14 journalists have been killed so far. 0 of those are citizen journalists, thank goodness, but of course, just any journalist dying is bad, and 1 media assistant has been killed. So again, a very dangerous country. The interesting thing about Indian media is that it's been active for a long, long time, and a lot of that has to do with the British being involved in its colonization and the government structures and different things like that. So it's been active since the late 18th century. Print media started as early as 1780 there. Their radio broadcasting began in 1927, which is a lot earlier than some countries when you think about radio and how it came to being. Indian media is actually one of the oldest among media types in the world and media mediums. So just thinking about India overall, the influences it's had and where it is right now, it's crazy to think that it's one of the oldest forms of a media system in the world. However, many of the media systems are controlled by large corporations, which take in a lot of revenue from advertising, subscriptions, and then they sell copyrighted material. So quick facts: there are over 100,000 publications registered as newspapers for India. India has the 2nd largest newspaper market in the world, with daily newspapers combined to be about 240 million copies. And with them being the biggest newspaper market in the world, it's just interesting to think about the fact that they still rely on newspapers a lot. They're still selling hundreds and millions of copies of newspapers daily. When you think the rest of the world is really moving away from that platform, not so much that we're not getting news from major newspapers, but the actual print versions are not as wanted. And so India is still the leader in newspaper printing. They sell over 1 million copies each day. And let's see, India, when it comes to satellite channels, they have 1,600 satellite channels, and over 400 of those are news channels. So a quarter of their satellite channels are just news. So the first Indian newspaper was printed in 1780, and then several others followed after that. These newspapers really carried into the British rule in India. And then the oldest newspaper in Asia was founded in India in 1822. The first Hindi language newspaper published in India was published in 1826. And then even after their independence from Britain in 1947, English language papers continued to be the prominent seller in India. Currently, India publishes about 1,000 Hindi dailies. So Hindu specific related newspapers every day. And English is, of course, the second language in terms of the number of daily newspapers. So they sell Hindi and English, and then I do believe they sell a few other languages, but they're just not as popular. When it comes to broadcasting, again, they started radio in 1927, but it really became the responsibility of the state in 1930. So for about 3 years, it was independently ran. There was a limited duration of television programming that started in 1959, but then a whole new wave of broadcasting followed in 1965. The government of India plays a really big part in their broadcasting medium, and they use it for mass education in India's rural areas. So think like a PBS sort of way. By the 1990s, they really started using this as an education tool in India's villages. And then in 1997, the public service broadcasting was established. So that's when they officially started their own like PBS version in India. And so you can see that they really use that as a way to reach rural communities that maybe can't get access to newspapers daily or get satellite channels and things like that. They have these programs that they can send them to really use for education. And then in 2006, the government of India released that there was a community radio policy that really allowed agricultural centers, educational institutions, and civil society organizations to basically say, hey, we want to apply for a FM broadcasting license and use that to really develop our community, to get news out to people that are in rural areas and things like that. So one of the biggest things that you'll find that comes out of India is Bollywood. As you can see on the screen, this is Priyanka Chopra. She is married to Nick Jonas, and she is one of the most popular Bollywood stars in India. And Bollywood, of course, is influenced by Western Hollywood. So the history of film in India began in 1895. Really, they wanted modest dressing and really subdued sexuality in films because they wanted all sorts of audiences to be able to watch them, not only in India, but in close related Islamic countries. As their cinema began to gain popularity, they started producing about 1,000 films annually in various languages of India or surrounding countries. Hindi cinema specifically is known as Bollywood and formerly as Bombay cinema. It is based in Mumbai, and it is the world's largest by number of feature films producer. So in the world, they produce the most films. In 2017, India Cinema produced 1,986 feature films, and 364 of those were Hindi films alone. When you think about box office revenue in India, 43% of it is Indian Bollywood films. The rest are other films from around the world. So almost half of their cinema is based strictly in India. If you haven't watched Bollywood films or anything like that, there's a wide variety of them on Netflix or Amazon Prime, and I would encourage you to watch them. They range from very campy to musical to dance style to actually just any other film that you would see here in America. So when it comes to Indian media, we talked a little bit that it was controlled by private sectors. And some of those sectors are just businessmen, politicians, and government bureaucracies. Sorry. And they are facing criticism that basically they have very biased reporting that's motivated by whatever system that they believe in politically, religiously, anything like that. And some even behave like one party owned or government party owned, and are very selective about what they present to the public. Just, in the past decade or so, a lot of mainstream media channels have been accused of printing and telecasting a lot of unverified and biased news. And so then they have to go back and retract it later and change what they were saying. So they really just give out information without verifying it to begin with. In 2018, the Chief Justice of India said that journalists cannot write anything they imagine and behave as if they were sitting in some pulpit. So basically, he was saying you can't use your right as journalists in your medium to just say whatever you want. It needs to be unbiased facts. This got even worse, of course, during the pandemic. And then when it comes to natural disasters, the reporting just gets out of hand. It becomes very sensationalized. So I wanted to look at some of the new media in India. They are very on top of some cutting edge applications there. So one of them is House Party. It allows for group video messaging for about 8 users. And they can really have fun with it. They can use video filters, stickers, fun effects. So this is like FaceTime, Snapchat, things like that. It grew from 1 million to 20 million users in 2018 alone, and is still very popular today. They also have an app called Trell. Basically, this is for content creators to really create content and engage with others on social media. So think of it like as a Pinterest. So you can get ideas, you can share ideas, you can make money off of it. Basically, it has 4 aspects: discovery, create, share, and shop. And they use all sorts of things from photos to videos and all sorts of categories to really show off their creations and content. You also have Hello. Basically, this is a social media platform that shows off about 13 Indian languages. It's one of the most popular social media platforms in India. It allows people to share content across various categories, so similar to the one we just looked at. It currently has about 50 million users across India. And when you think about it, it could be similar to like a TikTok sort of application. They also have Vero. It's their equivalent of Instagram. It allows people to share movies, books, TV, places, photos, and links. The cool thing about Vero, though, is it has no ads. So although it is like our Instagram, it's not like our Instagram, right? Only content through 4 options, are allowed, so your close friends, your friend, acquaintance, and followers. Um, they really wanted this to be an authentic social network. There are no algorithms that really show you what's going on. It's really an organic, place for people to share with different groups of people, whether they be your close friends, your acquaintances, or your followers. Right now, they have about 3 million people that use it. So, with all of that, you can see that India has a very robust media presence. They have cinema, they have newspapers, they have radio, television, they have all these social media applications. But a lot of it is very limited in what you can say or how you use it, thanks to this guy. This is their Prime Minister, Modi, Narendra Modi. Basically, he became India's prime minister in 2014. He is a member of the BJP, which is kind of the party that runs India right now. It's very right wing, Hindu nationalist, and it is a volunteer organization that really guides this idea very, far right. Under Modi's tenure, under his leadership, India has experienced a lot of democratic backsliding. So they had made lots of strides decades before, and then Modi came in and he wanted it to be a lot more conservative. He actually introduced what was called the Citizenship Amendment Act, which resulted basically with a ton of protests across the country. And they were protesting the fact that this law doesn't allow Muslims to be eligible to gain citizenship if they're from a Muslim majority country. This act was the first time that religion had been overtly, excuse me, guys, used as a criterion for citizenship. And really, it attracted a lot of global criticism because you are basically denying a group of people based on their religion or relation of religion from where they are to become citizens of another country. With Modi, they have really cracked down on what's called the Indian sedation law. And really, that's just saying that words, either spoken or written, or by signs, or by visible representation, that attempt to bring hatred or contempt or attempt to excite disaffection towards the government. So basically, anything you say or write or show that says anything against the government is against the law. You'll get fined for it, and a maximum punishment is life imprisonment. And it's no joke. They will give you life in prison for simply saying anything they think is against the government. Meanwhile, if you are charged with sedation, you have to surrender your passport. You are not eligible for a government job. You must produce anything that could save you in court by yourself, and you have to pay for any legal fees on your own. It is not provided for you. One of his main things is really weaponizing the media. He tries to flood mainstream media with speeches and information that really push his national populist ideology. Um, so much so that he really has developed close friendships with billionaire businessmen who own these media enterprises. And the other thing is that people across the world, not just in India, but in other countries, really like him. Like, he has visited presidents here, and they always say that he's an upstanding man. But when you look at how he treats people in his country, especially journalists or those who are not Hindu, it is not upstanding. So his strategy against journalism works kind of in two ways. He really integrates himself with leading media outlets. And then those journalists that know that he's friends with their owners and their bosses basically don't criticize the government, or they know they're going to get fired or thrown in jail. Um, anything that he says that is extremely divisive or derogatory um, often constitutes disinformation. And so the media, when they record it and they put it out, people just believe him. Um, Really, he is just making the journalists the bad people in this, very divisive. The the country doesn't really believe journalists if they say anything against him. But the thing is he doesn't maintain a relationship with the media. He has never once held a press conference during his time in office. And so think back like the couple weeks ago when George Ramos was talking to Trump. Yes, it was divisive. Trump was not nice to him. He was not really nice to the president either. But he had the chance to make a statement to ask questions, right? People can't do that with Modi. He will not allow it. But instead, he does use Twitter, like one of our past presidents, and a monthly radio show to commute directly with the public. So basically, he's just trying to cut out the media so that they don't go against anything he says. Really, again, if journalists say anything out against the government that is considered sedation, they have life imprisonment. Modi also uses his own little army of trolls. We kind of know where this comes from, right? We have a similar idea here in America. And they basically have waged war against journalists on social media. These campaigns that these trolls use routinely call for journalists to be killed. And even skeptical journalists who censor themselves, who really go with what Modi says and try to support him are, just because of what they do for a living, can be put in prison. When it comes to foreign journalists in India, he has imposed one of the strictest restrictions on foreign journalists. And he did it suddenly and without explanation, saying that they weren't allowed to come over. Visas were very tightened and hard to get. And if anything was going on that could be seen as divisive in the country, journalists and foreign journalists were not allowed to go into it to set foot in that part of the country. The Modi administration has really cracked down on the media, and sometimes broadcast media isn't allowed into every part of the country because they don't want them to hear about what's going on in other parts. And it has approved very few foreign media into getting into the country, so they don't get foreign media very much. For example, like Bloomberg, which is an American media giant, cannot get a license to broadcast in India despite spending millions and millions and millions of dollars. So I want you to watch this video, kind of what people think of Modi and what's going on, and just, see for yourself their opinion of him.
A global watchdog monitoring freedom of expression has named India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi as one of 37 predators of press freedom, world leaders who are accused of censorship and targeting those who work in the media. It comes less than a month after Mr. Modi signed a joint statement with G7 countries reaffirming the values of freedom of expression. India currently ranks 142nd out of 180 countries on the World Press Freedom Index. This is its lowest position since Reporters Without Borders began the ranking in 2002. One journalist has been killed in India for their work so far this year, while 4 were killed last year. Only yesterday, Twitter lost its legal immunity for content posted on its social media platform after falling foul of new IT rules that the United Nations has previously warned may hinder privacy and freedom of opinion and expression. Among those who have felt the effects of media repression in India is the journalist Rana Ayub, who's facing a criminal investigation over a tweet of a controversial video. Ms. Ayub is accused, along with others, of allegedly spreading misinformation aimed at stoking religious tensions.
this particular case, they have only picked up 3 Muslim journalists and 3 political activists, all who happen to be Muslim. But yes, the larger question is, yes, they are going against every journalist who is critical of this dispensation. But what is surprising, Yelda, is the day I received the FIR from the UP police, the day I was booked, the same day, at least 3 central agencies sent summons to me and my family members. And a lot of questions by the central agencies to me are, who is Jeff Bezos? Why do I write for Time magazine? Do I get foreign funding? Do I have an agenda of maligning Narendra Modi? I'm joining Substack. So the question they're asking me is, who gave you the offer? Why are you working for international publications? It feels like they are accusing me of maligning India's international image.
That was journalist Rana Ayub there. Well, I'm joined now by Shaina Nana Chudasama, a spokesperson for India's ruling BJP party. Thank you so much for joining us here, Ms. Chudasama, on the programme. You've just heard from Rana Ayub. Can I get you to respond to what she's saying?
So obviously, there are certain people who are Hindu right-wing and certain people who are so-called seculars who believe that they are pseudo-secular. The word secular, which has been also in the preamble of the Indian Constitution, and not ostensibly right-wing Hindu adhering, is obviously that in a country as diverse as India, you're going to have multiple opinions, and we're welcoming that. Any legitimate voice of dissent is welcome. But if you have an amalgamation of press which has an agenda and is trying to pretend to be of a particular community or religious belief, as Ms. Ayub and the others have, and if their intent is to indicate some kind of discomfort in our country, which is secular in nature, then I think it is absolutely right for the government of the day to act. And what have we acted on? A fake video which talked about a Muslim man who was not targeted for saying something which he did not say.
Ms. Chudasama, I'm just going to interrupt there because I asked Rana Ayub about that video and the accusation that the video is not what she says it is. And she told me that in a subsequent video, that particular man who was targeted said that he did actually say that. So, you know, what is your response to that? Because it is your word against hers. She says, I'm a journalist, I just want to be left alone, and journalism is not a crime in this country.
Absolutely welcome to be a journalist of repute. But if you're going to be a journalist who is a part of a misinformation campaign, part of a media and journalistic contribution only being to make India a communal hub, which we are not, then I think that the government of the day has every right to scrutinize extremely divisive, derogatory speech, which constitute disinformation and enable the media to achieve only what they want, which is sensationalism. Please understand that Prime Minister Modi, to neutralize the media...
India is the largest democracy in the world. If you look at your constitution, Article 19 of India's constitution implicitly mentions freedom of press and allows a journalist or media outlet to cover any story and bring it to audiences without impacting the national security of the country. Does Rana Ayub not have the right to share a video? She says she's being targeted because she's a Muslim, and other journalists who did the exact same thing as she did were not targeted.
Look, please don't play the victim card when you're a package of disinformation. These hate campaigns on social media, what does it do to the secular fabric of India? If you have a campaign which is routinely includes, you know, a journalist reporting something which is factual, please go ahead and do it. But the ideology that we are some kind of a spawned Hindu nation where Prime Minister Modi is some kind of a megalomaniac is factually incorrect. Because
Ms. Chudasama, we're just short on time, so I just want to ask you one more question. You're saying that the government of the day has the right to scrutinise these journalists, but India is currently ranked 142nd out of 180 countries on the World Press Freedom Index. And the Prime Minister himself has been named a press freedom predator. Surely that worries you, it worries the Prime Minister, and it worries today's the government of the day, as you put it.
What worries me is the authenticity of the RSF. And if we really go down and find out who is behind some kind of a criminal conspiracy to defame India, a lot would be announced. And I don't think it is about you being Hindu or Muslim. It's about facts and the reality that we are a peace-loving nation that coexists with Hindus, Muslims, Jains, Sikhs, and every caste, creed, community. And for those who are only trying to target Prime Minister Modi, target with facts, unsubstantiated proof cannot be your victory trophy for you for a limited few.
Shaina Nana Chudasama, thank you very much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you.
Okay. So as you can see, you had two different opinions of what's going on and how people are treated when it comes to journalistic rights, right? So this is a media professor who is Indian. She currently works at the London School of Economics. And this is kind of just to wrap up everything that we've talked about in India. And she said, in the past 6 years, the Indian media has deteriorated. There is no semblance of truth or responsibility left in the vast majority of media reports. And so from everything that we've talked about in this lecture, to that video, to the assignments that you read this week, just think about how vast the Indian media system is, but also how limited it is. All right, that's all for India this week.